A horde of zombies that worship an alpha zombie like a Greek god guarding a casino vault treasure with a fucking nuclear bomb about to go off, all constructed around a statement on fatherhood? Yeah, it sounds like Zack is back from his time in the DCEU in a big way. Fatherhood is a recurring theme in the work of Zack Snyder. With him being a father of 8 children, it can be easy to see why fatherhood has ingrained itself so deeply into so many of his films. In Man of Steel, we witness Superman's father sacrifice himself to save their son, and then, after he arrived on Earth, we then get to see a powerful bond form between Superman and his surrogate father, Jonathan Kent. Justice League features Silas Stone, desperate to repair his son's body after a horrific accident, turning him into Cyborg in a misguided, obsessive application of his love. It's in the latter film that Snyder's personal history as a father most deeply affects the final work. Snyder was initially developing Justice League when his daughter, Autumn, tragically passed away. Snyder withdrew from the project to be with his family, and, as is well documented now, Joss Whedon was brought in to, utterly bastardized Snyder's vision and work at the instruction of Warner Brothers, putting out a hollow and messy disaster that received a critical thrashing. While Snyder thankfully would eventually find vindication from this injustice in the form of the Snyder Cut, at the time, he had to contend with having had a dream project ruined while still mourning his daughter. I'm not going to pretend to intimately know the man personally or anything, but between the personal tragedy and the artistic turmoil, you have to imagine it led Snyder on some form of soul-searching, introspective rediscovery as a filmmaker. Enter Army of the Dead. Snyder's second wind, his project of passion that sent him back to his roots, a smaller scale but still bombastic popcorn flick that he had complete control over. And one of the best films he's ever made, if I'm being quite honest. For all the issues Snyder has faced with the studios and filmmaking politics over the past few years, Zaddy gave us a damn good zombie film that makes me think back to his early days on the Dawn of the Dead remake that kickstarted his career in the best ways. In the process, Snyder has also created a powerful statement on fatherhood that must have proven to be as cathartic and, ironically for a film about zombies, life-affirming for him as it is for anyone in the audience. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, but ultimately, this is why Zack Snyder so deeply needed Army of the Dead. Let's set the stage, shall we? The setting, Vegas. The city populated entirely and packed to the brim at that by zombies. The story, Dave Bautista's Scott Ward is a built-like-a-brick mercenary who is leading a team into the city to steal $200 million from an ultra-secure basement vault in a casino, within 24 hours of a low-yield nuclear bomb reducing Vegas and anything in it to dust. Scott has suffered from a tortured past during the early days of the zombie outbreak and finds himself at an all-time low, flipping burgers in a greasy spoon to pay the bills. He takes the mission in order to bring himself out of a financial low, but also to find redemption from his past, and in the eyes of his daughter, Kate. Right away, this central relationship of the film is one of the strongest elements, and it's pretty easy to see the through line from Zack Snyder's personal history to Scott Ward's. Focusing so much of the story on Scott's desire to rebuild his relationship with his daughter can easily be seen as Snyder using his art to cope with the loss of his own, while simultaneously paying tribute to Autumn. The fact that Snyder not only wrote and directed the film, but served as his own cinematographer for the first time in his entire career shows us an artist insistent on fulfilling his vision as faithfully as possible. And yeah, that can easily be seen as a FU response to the studios who robbed him of his vision last time, but you don't generally see a filmmaker absolutely bury themselves in a film purely out of spite. You see that happen when the project takes on a deeply personal meaning for them. And considering that Snyder already has a history, even before the tragedy that occurred, of being a strong voice for cinematic dads, it just makes sense that he would only amplify this viewpoint afterwards. The film feels more intimate because he's shooting it himself, more personal, more in line with the quasi-guerrilla filmmaking of his early career. In tandem with the trashy Vegas zombie backdrop, maybe Army of the Dead is less polished than, say, Batman v Superman or 300, but it still feels so quintessentially Zack Snyder. He's almost made himself vulnerable as an artist here, and even if you love his other work and find yourself making a case for it like I often do, I don't think you can help but feel like this really represents something fresh and exciting in his filmography. Army of the Dead opens with an absolute bang in what is arguably one of Zack Snyder's most iconic opening credit sequences to date, and that's saying something because the man is a master at utilizing the opening credit sequence. I'm not quite ready to say that it tops the Watchmen one, though I could see that happening in the near future, but I will say that it's at the very least on par with it. The film absolutely does not mess around, showing us how the very first zombie got loose before the incredible opening sequence shows us precisely how out of control the zombie apocalypse spread, but entirely localized within Las Vegas only. From here right to the end of the film, there's also a certain choreography and twisted elegance to all the zombie blood and guts on display, just as there was in Dawn of the Dead. In that sense, Army of the Dead is like what you get if Zack Snyder had been able to make that film today with 15 more years of advancements in CGI and even more so, practical effects which are used gloriously throughout. It's really wholesome to see Zack Snyder come out of such a long period of personal and professional turmoil with a project that just oozes the amount of fun he was having with it. And I mean that. You've got to imagine, and everything that the cast has been posting on Instagram seems to affirm this, that the atmosphere on this set was amazing. But for as much as this definitely provides a lot of massive fun for the audience, it's remarkable how tense and layered this movie is as a thriller. The zombies are intelligent, building almost a hierarchical kingdom out of Vegas. They move and fight quick and hard, way beyond the limp marching squadrons of undead you'd see on The Walking Dead, and far more in line with the terrifying sprinters Danny Boyle unleashed on the world in 28 Days Later. These characters are put into tough and tight situations, and the film really milks that for all it's worth. Nobody is safe, and I mean nobody. You don't know who, if anyone, can make it out alive in a given fight. And even when we get a chance to breathe, there's a constant atmosphere of uneasiness that permeates even the most relaxed sequences. And yet, in the midst of all of this, Snyder doesn't lose track of the more important story he's trying to tell in between the zombie carnage. There's a lot to be said about the role parenthood plays in Army of the Dead, but there's also a lot of social commentary in general. Right outside the city, which again is about to be disintegrated by a nuclear bomb, is a quarantine camp, which, from what we see of it, is disproportionately filled with minorities, most of whom women and children at that. The camp is manned by abusive psychopaths, people whose agency to initiate on-the-spot temperature checks allows them to intimidate and terrorize innocent people. We might not quite be in kids in cages territory here, but we aren't far off either. There's also a half-assed attempt by the government to evacuate the camp, but it seems very much like America doing what it normally does. The bare minimum in order to look good in front of news camera crews, when in reality they've just done untold amounts of harm. Rather than letting these people, who are clearly not zombies, go, they're instead dooming many of them to a horrible fate. And the fate itself is like a microcosm of American aggression. Instead of taking the untold number of soldiers they have manning the quarantine camp, perching them on top of the impregnable wall built around Vegas and having them exterminate the zombies one by one, the government has decided it's just best to drop a nuke in the desert from day one on the 4th of July. Because Big Boom!
I just did a boom boom.
Ultimately, the people in the quarantine camp are portrayed with a deep-seated empathy, very much in line with Zack Snyder's personality. He wants the people to be safe, advocating for them, and even though they're fictional characters, making a case for their rights and humanity. It's an almost fatherly instinct, but also a politically reactionary one. With this subplot, there's very much a finger on the pulse of what the government tried to do at the border, turning infrastructure that was intended to be very short-term, as in single-day processing maximum, into long-term holding cells for children. I think the images of children locked in cages affected Snyder, and it would make sense. He has 8 kids, and 4 of them are adopted. I think any person with a conscience, but especially someone who is a parent and even more so, one who has taken in kids who were probably at a massive disadvantage beforehand, would be profoundly affected by that visual. Consequently, it makes perfect sense that an artist would find a way to incorporate that into their work. As a result, what we get with this part of the narrative is far more than just a political jab. It's the humanitarian in Zack Snyder coming through in spades. Now, locking kids in cages is a very high level of evilness, and very few people can boast having reached it. With that being said, the characters in Army of the Dead are largely far from saints. They're mercenaries, petty criminals, gang members, abusive guards. Their hands aren't clean. You could almost say they've sinned. After all, what is Las Vegas but the city of sin? Obviously, a casino is a fun locale for a heist, but the motif of Vegas being a trashy, uninhibited strip of backdoor depravity parallels each of the characters' journeys. They have to go through and then escape from a now nightmarish mutation of the city of sin. They have to battle through sin in order to free themselves. Scott, in particular, has to come to terms with his past, protect his daughter, and repair the rift between them just as urgently as he needs to get in, steal the money, and fight his way out of Vegas. Zack Snyder himself might not be a morally gray person like his characters are, but he's a man who has faced daunting hardships. It's been over 3 years since so many things fell apart at once for him, and he had to find a way to work through it and land back on his feet. Army of the Dead makes for its own kind of bounty for him. The dividends of struggle, his pain, his hard work, and his dedication to his work and his family alike. His victory is his own battle to free himself in his own way. Now look, maybe this isn't even the way Snyder intended the film to be interpreted, but it's pretty thought-provoking, and it just speaks to the fact that Army of the Dead is so much more than just another zombie flick. There's a lot to unpack in this film, and there are a lot of angles from which it can be contemplated. It speaks to Snyder's strengths as a storyteller, how his filmmaking revolves around so much more than just spectacle, or, as his detractors just love to parrot, his slow-mo, speed ramp headache style. The man cares deeply about character and thematic resonance, and I don't think he gets even a significant fraction of the praise he deserves for it. More importantly, it showcases why Army of the Dead fires so well on all cylinders. The film is entertaining enough to practically put on repeat, but even without that, you're going to want to return to a second or third time just to let the nuance sink in, to focus on a different character or subplot, and to take away from the film even more than you had the last time. It's the same reason that Dawn of the Dead and Watchmen are such enduring modern classics. Yes, new people are discovering these films every week, but over a decade after Snyder first unleashed them on the world, the people who were initially graced with it just keep coming back for more. I think Army of the Dead is primed for the exact same kind of future. Look, straight up, this is just a kick-ass movie. Snyder allows for such great character beats, something that is really impressive. It can be difficult to attach yourself to the characters in a film like this, where they inherently and automatically feel disposable. So many genre films like this fail to build a bond between the audience and the faces on screen that the ones that succeed are only better for having done so. The Dirty Dozen is an example of this. Yeah, the characters are being sent on a suicide mission, and it's almost a guarantee that most of them aren't going to make it back home, but they also have fully developed personalities, and it affects you when one of them is taken out. Army of the Dead is exactly the same way. And that's not a one-to-one comparison by any means, so I don't want to see anything in the comment section that's saying, "Oh, he said Army of the Dead is just as good as The Dirty Dozen." That's not what I'm saying. You're rooting for these people practically from the very first shot they appear in, and you want them to be okay. If something bad happens to one of them, it's impactful, and it casts a shadow over the rest of the movie. I'm not denying that Army of the Dead boasts impressive action sequences. I'm just saying that the movie isn't only impressive action sequences. It's so much more than that. It's the product of a filmmaker digging deep and rediscovering his soul and love and passion for movies and wearing his heart on his sleeve in the process. It's 100% Zack Snyder.
That's heavy, brother. But I dig it.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out this video. Hopefully you all enjoy Army of the Dead as much as I did. Like I said in the video, if you aren't a fan of Zack's take on the DCEU, well, I feel sorry for you personally, but also I think this is one that you'll really enjoy and might bring you back around on him as a filmmaker. He's back in his element and he's having the time of his life, and he's saying a lot about himself in the process, which is part of the reason why I loved it so much. But if you've seen the film, go ahead and jump down in the comments section and let me know your thoughts on it. Do you love it? Do you hate it? What do you think of it? I'd love to hear it. Let's have a great conversation down in the comments section below. As always, guys, be sure to like this video, share with your friends, and subscribe to the FilmSpeak channel, where the conversation continues after the credits. And we're bringing you video essays, interviews, TV talk, all that great stuff week to week. Now, weirdly enough, this was not the video that was supposed to be my next video on the channel. It was supposed to be Quantum of Solace, my extensive deep dive defense, if you will, of that movie. But, you know, I've been battling YouTube copyright claim and all that nonsense, and so we had to push that back a little bit. I wanted to put out the Army of the Dead one because I knew it was going to be easy, it's going to be relevant, so get that out there. We'll have that video for you this week, and then hopefully the copyright issues will be cleared up. And next week, we're going to be talking about Quantum of Solace. It has been long overdue. The video is literally sitting in my YouTube queue right now, like on the videos, just waiting to be published as long as I get the green light for copyright. But regardless, I think that thing is coming out next week. So be sure to stick around here. It's coming. Don't worry. But lastly, guys, if you like me specifically and like what I have to say, you can give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right, that's going to do it for this video, guys, and I will catch you next time. Take care.